Okay, the moment has arrived. We've got concrete coming for this footing. The wind is blowing, it's having gusts of 40 miles an hour. So this is one of the toughest times to pour out a footing like this and wet set it. We've got 11.5 yards. So this is going to be kind of a tough one, but one of the things that makes it so that you can do something like this is we didn't put delay set in it, but I would highly recommend, if you have a pour this size, to put delay set in it. It'll save you a ton of headache. So that's one of the main tips that I would give on this kind of a pour. The next tip would be to make sure all of your uprights are cut and bent in place, sitting there where you can just grab them and stab them. And then another thing is your block. Make sure your H blocks, everything is already counted out in position to where as you're wet setting, you're laying your block, you're setting your block into the footing. You get to your H, it just goes in next. You've already pre-counted it all out. It just saves you a ton of time, and it can make or break the footing. Another important thing is if your string is blowing around in a windy day like this, it just pays to have extra string supports in the middle of your wall. And so those are some of the main tips. I guess one more thing is I could tell you how to calculate the concrete. It's basically length times the width times the depth divided by 27, and that's your yardage. So if you have a 14-inch footing, you take 14 inches divided by 12, and that is your feet. That's 14 inches in feet. And then you basically have to put everything in feet. So 14 inches times 10 inches thick times the length of your footing. And then you go divide that by 27, because there's 27 cubic feet in a yard of concrete. And that is the amount of yardage you need. Give yourself a buffer of half a yard or so, and you're good to go. Just clearing off a spot so the truck can get through here. Yeah, drive around the wall. Tree just barely blew over to the neighbors, and we're pouring footings today with wet setting our block. We get these gusts of 40 miles an hour. I usually like to wet the footing down right before we pour. It helps a lot to slow that concrete down. But if you spray your string on a long stretch, sometimes it'll make your string stretch and sag. Got our footing partially wet set, but while we're wet setting, then we have the rest of the guys are pouring out, and we added 5 gallons to the rest of our load. We poured out about half of it, so that when I get to that spot, then I have a little bit of a breather, because it will get hard by the time I get there. So that will give me a chance to catch back up. The concrete will be looser when I get there. Step and you're trying to get your block layout, then basically every other block is the same. So you go straight down off of this block, straight down to the exact same layout, and that should land just right for your layout. So once you wet set that thing, then your next row will be right on the money. Sometimes you have to go back and adjust a couple, depends on how much you have to shove it in. That's why I like to have my shovel cut at 7 inches, because it doesn't make me have to pound it in too far. You have to go in 1 inch. When you set this one moves, so you have to go back and sit there and adjust them all. That's basically 1 inch high. So I'm already pounding them in 1 inch. I don't like to if it gets too hard. That inch becomes a mile. So it's a little bit hard to pound them in. It gets to be that much and it's hard. If it gets too sassy, then you can just sit there and shove it down like this. Helps you speed up a little bit if it's real hard. Just make sure you're keeping this tight. If you grow your wet set row, then when you're laying block, you'll be laying in between your columns, and you won't. If you gap these, then when you're laying block, you have a lot more consistency, so you'll get them all nice and tight, but the bottom one's gapped. So when you get to your pilaster, it'll start coming out of your H block. So you have to make sure these are tight. So right here, when you're setting this, you only want this block halfway into your H, so that you have some expansion around, because like I said, if these joints here, if these joints get a little mud in them, this will grow. So if you have a little bit of room, you have the adjustment ability to go either way. And I've also noticed that sometimes these blocks will vary a 1/16 of an inch a piece. So if you have 16 of these that are a 1/16, that's an inch. So right here I have a 17 block run, so I could easily grow an inch off of 1/16. So I'm going halfway just so that I have one way or the other. So you're probably better off to slightly favor further in and give yourself a 1/2 inch or so. That way you don't have to fight it. With your H's, when you're pounding them in, they can hold up your string higher than the rest of your blocks, so you have to be really paying attention to these ones. I would just as soon set the H slightly low, just so that it doesn't do that, because you can make up for it easy enough in mortar. You got to stay on it. This concrete can kick before you're ready for it too. This wind has dried this concrete out, so we're a little bit behind it, but I think we'll still get it. Okay, so I tapped this block and this seat fell off. You can throw this block away, or you can spin it over, set that broken edge down in the concrete where nobody will see it. It'll be plenty tough. That way you don't have to throw away a perfectly good block. inches from that block to this end right here. That way you have it exactly centered on here. Normally you would calculate for your 3/8 vertical joint, but in this situation these blocks are 16 inches long because they're just tongue and groove. So they're 16 right on. So you just go 8 from right here to here on your step. Okay, so after you're done wet setting, you want to knock all your high spots off your footing. Otherwise your landscapers will hate your gizzards. Your mother-in-law will hate you, your neighbors will hate you. It's just a good idea to do it. Eliminates a lot of hate. Okay, we got this wall all wet set and we're ready to start building leads. So our next video will be on leads and how to do the wall itself, how to keep your corners from blowing over when you're grouting. So there'll be a bunch more in the next videos. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss our next video.